Thanks for your attendance and your attention for the next half hour. I'll be talking to you about GameMaker Studio. A little bit about me. My name is Chris Sanyk. I've been an attendee at Game Development Week since 2010, roughly. My website is csanyk.com. You can find me on Twitter at @csanyk, and my email address is csanyk@gmail.com. I do like feedback. If you're interested in learning more about this after the talk, I'll be around the rest of the day. I will entertain questions as long as we have the floor here. If you want to talk to me at any point or get in contact with me after, I can answer questions. I can give you advice. We can collaborate on stuff. I'm really open to that sort of thing. I just want to give you a real quick rundown of GameMaker's history. GameMaker is a very inexpensive game making tool. It's its main claim to fame over the years. It was introduced in 1999 by a fellow named Mark Overmars. In 2007, version 7 was the current release, and at that point, Mark was kind of overworked with maintaining the project and kind of turned it over to a company called Yo-Yo Games. They released the following year a version of this for Mac. And then just last year, they released something called Studio, which is a revamped, rewritten, more professional version of the original GameMaker. One of the long-standing criticisms of the product has been that it wasn't really a full-fledged development platform. It wasn't for serious professionals. So it's a nice toy, but not really something that you want to make a serious game with. And that's starting to change. GameMaker Studio has been out for a little bit over a year, I think, if you count the beta period now. And it is no longer just an educational toy. So this is probably too small for you to read, but there are free editions. If you get the free edition of Studio, it's pretty cheap. It is, well, cheap is free. It is pretty limited, I meant to say. But there are a number of affordable options. You can get for $50 the standard edition, which allows you to build to Windows, Mac OS. The professional edition allows you to build to a variety of other platforms, and it's the next most cheapest at $99, and then you can add on additional modules beyond that. If you want to get the whole shebang at one go, you can spend $500 and get the Master Edition, which includes everything. The reasons you should consider GameMaker are it's inexpensive to get started with. You can get started for free or spend $50 to $500. Off you go. It is a very gentle learning curve. It's ideal for newbies, whether you're an elementary school student or just a non-coder. Maybe you're an artist or a game designer who has no previous programming experience and you'd like to be able to make video games on your own. GameMaker is very easy to learn. You don't have to know any coding to get started with it. We'll talk about that a little bit more. It has really good community and vendor support. The documentation that the vendor provides is excellent. There is a vibrant community on the Yo-Yo Games website where you can go for discussion, advice, all kinds of information is readily available there. And as far as reasons that you should use GameMaker, it's really good for rapid development. You can get a project up and running with a very minimal amount of work. You can use it for prototyping if you want to do something quick, just to prove a concept that you might want to do in a more full-fledged development environment. If you want to build something in like Objective-C and you're used to programming at a low level, you might not be interested in GameMaker, but you can still find it useful as something that you can build quick and dirty projects with, just to see if something is worth doing in a more serious platform. And as I've said, in the last year, it's gotten a lot more developer support behind it, and has moved in leaps and bounds to become a serious tool that you can use yourself if you're not interested in using another platform. You can do everything in GameMaker now, and you might not have the same performance as you would with lower level language and framework, but it's still quite good for a lot of types of games. It's really strong in small projects. Up until recently, for the majority of the history of GameMaker, it was geared toward a solo developer. It wasn't very good for collaboration. These days, you can integrate to a SVN subversion repository and do source check-in, source control, which allows it to be much more flexible. You can work with a team now, but it's still better for smaller projects. It's good for 2D games. It has some 3D capabilities, but there are a lot of limitations to it in terms of performance and runtime, and there are a lot of better choices if you're interested in doing 3D. Later on this evening, we'll be talking about Unity, so if you're interested in 3D games, be sure to attend that and learn more. And it tends to be action-oriented games that are easiest to develop on GameMaker. GameMaker is really flexible in general purpose. It isn't geared toward any one genre of games, but if you're looking to make like a turn-based game or a strategy game, it's not quite as good for that. But if you're making something that is more like an action-y arcade type of game, it's a really good choice for that. So what it actually comes with GameMaker, it contains an integrated development environment, which is the tool you actually use to build your game. It is a framework, which when you build your project, the framework is kind of like the base code that your game is going to be built on. So it provides a lot of built-in variables and constants, objects and properties and things like that. Makes it very easy for you to build your game quickly because all the primitive low-level stuff is taken care of for you. It has a runtime, so GameMaker is actually a scripting language, and scripts are interpreted currently by a runtime, which is basically a program that runs and interprets your game code and actually runs the game. And then the language itself is called GML, which stands for GameMaker Language. It has a fairly relaxed syntax. It's a more forgiving language in terms of syntax than a lot of other languages that you might start out with. So again, that's another reason why it's easier for newbie developers to get into. And it's a very simple language, as we'll see. And its syntax is kind of like C, but you can also, if you're used to Visual Basic, you can code in that kind of style, and it'll work too. Just to cover the more recent features that have been released in GameMaker, if you're familiar with the older versions, we'll talk about sort of the more traditional feature set. But the recent developments that have been coming out in the last year are a lot. So Yo-Yo Games has really gotten behind the product and been releasing things like crazy over the last year. So we now have the capability of releasing games to multiple build targets. You can target just about any major platform right now, including, as of last week, it was Linux. SVN integration, which I mentioned, and now they have other types of integration with advertising platforms, in-app purchases. You can have built-in metrics and analytics to tell you who's playing your game, what features they're using, what levels they enjoy most, that kind of thing. They've added a new physics system for 2D physics, which is based on the open source Box 2D. They just revamped their audio system and added native network support. Previously, GameMaker, you could use plugins and extensions to do network stuff, and now it's actually built in, so it's a little bit nicer that way. And they keep releasing stuff. It seems like every week they're coming out with a new build. If you're on the beta channel, you get updates just about every time you launch. And it's really nice to see them releasing new features and things like that so quickly.